All right, good evening, everyone. I'll try that again. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Finance public hearing on the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget, which will begin on July 1. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, which flag is over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have with us tonight members of the Board of Finance. I'm Lisa Hevner, I'm the chair. We have Vice Chair Art House, Art Wallace, Robert Helfand, Todd Burke, and Mike Doyle. We also have with us Superintendent of Schools Matt Curtis, Chair of the Board of Education Jeff Tyndall, Town Manager Mark Nelson, First Selectman Wendy Maxtudis, members of the Boards of Selectmen and Board of Ed, if you could raise your hands. We've got Town and Education staff. If you're from either of those, could you raise your hands and please be recognized? And we have Amy Merriweather, who is the Director of Finance and who helped our board in particular prepare for tonight. So with our thanks to both Amy and Melissa, who helped with the motions, which is no small job. So here's how tonight will go. We'll begin with 3 presentations from the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and then the Board of Selectmen. We'll move on to public audience. After public audience, we'll give boards and staff an opportunity to respond or address issues or questions that were raised during the public hearing. Our board that will then begin discussions. We anticipate extending the public hearing to April 22nd. Starting with what everyone wants to know, the Board of Selectmen and Education budgets, as proposed, plus the fire district mill rate would result in a 2.55% tax increase and a mill rate of 34.16. The mill rate and tax increase are estimates until the Board of Finance adopts a mill rate after the referendum. For a sample home in Simsbury, worth about $400,000, that's a tax increase of $238 a year, or about $19.83 a month. The fire district is an independent taxing district, which is not within the purview of our board. Their mill rate is approved through a separate and independent process. Tonight, we are only considering the town and education budgets. Those budgets, whoops, see if I can get that. Right there. Town and education only would result in an estimated tax increase of 2.36%. That increase is slightly higher than the 2.32% that went out in the flyer for this meeting because the town received new grand list numbers which were slightly worse. So a slight difference there. Over the next few slides, we'll walk you through the details. This budget was developed within the context of economic indicators. First, according to the latest Connecticut Comptroller report, while national inflation, according to the Consumer Price Index, which we refer to as CPI, decreased slightly to 2.8% in February. New England's inflation rate, however, rose from 4% to 4.5%. Prices are rising faster here for housing, medical care, clothes, education, and communication. Higher local inflation is making it harder for wage growth to keep up with prices. Second, the current Social Security cost of living adjustment is 2.5% this year. The COLA is an increase in Social Security benefits meant to counteract inflation. The current COLA increase, however, is below the inflation rate. The COLA is an important indicator of what residents living on fixed incomes can afford. This budget was also developed within the context of past tax increases, including substantial increases in the previous 2 years. As a reminder, fiscal year 2024 was a revaluation year, with the median tax increase of 5.18%. During that year, most homes increased substantially in value. Because changes in value were not uniform, some residents paid much higher taxes than 5.18%. About 10%, come on in, it's okay. I don't see a seat. No problem, it's pretty exciting. About 10% of residents in 2024 had a tax decrease. Interestingly, the average tax increase during the time frame on this slide, 2020 to 2026, was about 2.13% a year. But the brunt of that increase is being felt in the last 3 years, which has been very, very hard on all of us. Persistent inflation, which increases town costs, and chronic state underfunding of education have been major factors in higher taxes, higher than any of us want. Within this context, the Board of Finance established 3 primary goals for this year's budget. 1, a tax increase below 2.5%. Maintain Simsbury's AAA credit rating, which is the highest a municipality can earn and one that saves money on borrowing costs. And 3, budget within the fiscal guardrails for Simsbury's long-term fiscal health. The guardrails are our long-established fiscal policies that are listed here. You can call. We're pleased to report that all goals were met. This was accomplished by working in a collaborative manner with the boards of selectmen, education, town staff, and after hearing from many of you along the way. I offer my thanks and appreciation to everyone in this room who helped us get to where we are tonight. We've worked hard to present a budget under 2.5%. The process involves the coordination of the 3 major boards, staff, and stakeholders, while balancing needs, mandates, and community wants within limited resources. Budget development is a multi-month process. It began in December. At that time, we were projecting a 6.94% tax increase, and we're seeing across the state, some towns are actually ending up there. That was based on initially projected revenues and management's estimates of just fixed costs. The chart here shows how we got that down. The town is utilizing reserves. We received more revenues than initially projected, including increased state aid and new non-tax fees from the Board of Selectmen, and we made spending reductions. These adjustments enabled the town to lower the tax increase from a 6.94 to a 2.36, which is before you tonight. Now we're going to go into some specifics. What we pay in property taxes is a function of multiple factors. The grand list, which is the total amount of taxable property, or the size of the entire taxable pie. Spending, which we'll be talking a lot about tonight. State aid, the amount of other non-property tax revenue that we get from fees, fines, and charges, and the use of reserves and fund balance. This year, we had an especially difficult challenge because the grand list was basically flat, increasing just 0.19% over last year and bringing in just over $200,000 in new revenues to the town. When the grand list is flat, it's difficult to deliver the same level of services without a tax increase because costs go up for the town, just like they do for all of us. The next major driver of our taxes is our spending. Tonight, we are here to consider a budget of $128,451,969. Like every town in Connecticut, most of our taxes are used to fund the education budget. The education budget would increase a little over $3.3 million, or 3.9%. The town budget would increase about $850,000, or a 2.95% increase, and debt service will increase about $1.5 million, or 18.71%, due to increased costs for borrowing on projects approved in previous years, including Latimer Lane. That's a total spending increase of about $5.7 million, or 4.6%. Although spending increases by 4.65%, taxes are projected to increase by only 2.36%. That's because an increase in spending does not always translate into an increase in taxes. Again, whether taxes go up is a function of many factors, only one of which is spending. We'll look at some of those other factors in the next few slides. Focusing first on spending. This budget proposes $5.7 million more in spending than last year. Most of the spending increases are not discretionary. The largest driver of the spending increase this year is Board of Education instruction, increasing $1.5 million over last year, driven by negotiated contracts. Debt service is the second biggest driver, increasing $1.5 million over last year. Debt service is the annual cost of borrowing to pay for town projects and infrastructure. It is a legal obligation. The town must pay back what it owes and what it has borrowed. So those two non-discretionary. Other major drivers include education out-of-district tuition, operation and maintenance of our schools, public safety and police pensions, education administration, other town benefits excluding the police, education and transportation like buses, and smaller increases in various departments. The first selectwoman and the chair of the Board of Ed will walk us through their specifics. Moving to revenues. Come on. Hi, Sue. There's seats in the back if you want to go over there. Yeah, no problem. All towns in Connecticut rely heavily on the property tax. Other funding sources include state grants. We get about $9 million from the state, and smaller amounts from fees, charges, and fines. This year, the town is proposing to use $1.3 million in capital reserves and $450,000 of general fund balance to smooth the spike in debt service that we saw in the last slide and for tax relief. After the hearing, the Board of Finance, our board, will discuss using health reserves instead of general fund balance and may make that change. That change would not reduce services or the mill rate, but would give the town more flexibility to respond to, I would say, national uncertainty that may come our way during the year. This slide is a little bit busy, but it's probably the most important slide in the deck. This slide summarizes expenditures and revenues. Debt service is highlighted in gray. Whoops. See that? And that increases $1.5 million. Also highlighted in gray is the use of capital reserves. You'll see they're almost the same. The use of capital reserves gets this number down for tax relief. Total spending, again, is a little over $128 million, which is a 4.65%. Our spending is increasing above the rate of national inflation, but close to the New England rate of inflation. That's there. Of that total spending, we will need to raise $111,737,282 from taxes. That's referred to as the tax levy. The tax levy is increasing about 2.83% from last year. That is equivalent to the national rate of inflation. You may notice that the total spending increase is 465. The amount to be raised by taxes is 2.83, but the tax increase for individuals, again, is only 2.36%. This is due to all the factors that go into calculating taxes, spending, grand list, non-tax revenue, use of reserves, and fund balance. While total spending is above the rate of inflation, the tax increase is coming in below the rate of inflation, which was a primary goal of the Board of Finance. Because we are using capital reserves in a new way to offset the debt service increase, we want to spend a little time here. Knowing that debt service would temporarily spike, the town developed a plan to smooth this spike until it naturally dissipates in the out years. This slide shows what smoothing looks like and how it provides mill rate and tax relief. The blue line shows what the spike in debt service would be if we don't use capital reserves. That spike is an increase in expenditures that would mean higher taxes if we did nothing. The orange line shows lower debt service payments by utilizing capital reserves. The use of reserves lowers taxes. The chart below the graph details the plan. Year one, this year, we'll use 1.3 million of capital reserves. Year two, that goes down to 700,000. Year three, we use 300,000, and by the fourth year, we are back at zero. We start at zero, return to zero. The town has put money aside to pay for this plan, so there is no long-term fiscal cliff. The state has adopted two laws that impact motor vehicle taxes. First, the motor vehicle taxes are capped at 32.46 mils. Just this year, the state mandated new valuation process for vehicles, which will now be a straight depreciation calculation from MSRP instead of the retail value that was used in the past. This new methodology will reduce car taxes for most, but not all. It's like a revaluation. Most we think will see a decrease, but some will pay more. Whether your car taxes go up or down depends on the make and the age of your car. The finance director, Amy over here, shared this impact on a sample car in Simsbury to illustrate the change. For fiscal year 2026, under the old methodology, a 2024 Honda CR-V EX would have been taxed at $461. Instead, that same car will be taxed at $382 for a savings of about $79 or 10%. We think the median savings in Simsbury will be about 10% on your car tax. This slide we borrowed from Glastonbury with our thanks to their finance director and their assessment department, and is for illustrative purposes only. Actuals may be different. But here we show different cars and makes, and we see savings, and we see that some cars will see savings in car taxes, but some do not. The BMW and the Volvo in particular will be paying a little bit more, those models and years. Again, the finance director has estimated that motor vehicle tax savings in Simsbury will be about 10%, but again, some will pay more and some will pay less. In addition to the operating budgets, which are funded primarily through taxes, the town also adopts other budgets that are funded primarily through revenues other than current year property taxes. Funding sources for these other budgets also include fees, grants, capital reserves, bonds, and rents. While these budgets don't materially impact the mill rate, some will impact future budgets, bonding for example, and they do reflect substantial spending. They are listed here for just over $15 million. Total capital financing recommended in this budget is $8.6 million. That includes CNR, which are smaller capital, under $250,000, and CIP, Capital Improvement Plan capital, which is big capital, over $250,000. This slide shows all the funding sources: bonding, capital reserves, taxes, fees, grants, donations, and project savings. This budget includes a little over $3.1 million in bonding. Bonding refers to the process by which the town issues bonds or debt securities to finance projects with the town's promise to pay them back in terms of principal and interest. It's a way to borrow money without taking a loan from a bank. Projects funded with bonding do not always impact the current budget, interestingly, because it takes time to start projects and to go out to bond. But bonded projects do impose legal obligations to pay back the debt in future years, and for this reason, bonding does impact future budgets for the term of the bonds. The first select woman will walk us through the projects during her presentation. Because bonding costs impact future budgets, the town projects what those costs will be to ensure repayment costs don't crowd out spending on other essential services. Current town policy limits borrowing costs, debt service, to no more than 8% of the operating budget. This slide shows our debt service projections for the out years. The green slash marks show the town below our policy limit. As debt gets paid off, the town's debt service expenses decrease. This chart shows the town within the fiscal guardrails. For the past 2 years, I don't know how to, can you help me with that? We've got a strange sign. Okay, thank you. For the past 2 years, we've had essentially flat grand list growth. We're projecting slight increases over the next few years, but overall projections are below average. Without consistent and sustainable economic development, it will be difficult to offer the same services without raising taxes. If nothing changes, we will have difficult choices ahead. The Board of Finance monitors Simsbury's mill rate and taxes with peer towns to ensure we maintain our economic competitiveness and keep our home values stable. None of these budgets are final yet, but this chart shows a comparison in a moment in time. Simsbury's tax increase is projected to be lower than peer towns this year, but our mill rate remains high. That means, for example, that for a home valued at $400,000, a Simsbury resident pays a little over $800 more than a resident living in Avon. Taxes are about the dollar amount we pay, but they also reflect the value we get for those dollars, and we refer to that as the value proposition. Simsbury residents have been willing to pay a little more for all that we get. We share a collective pride in the fact that Simsbury is known for excellent schools, well-maintained roads, and I'll shout out to Tom Roy, who just won a major national award, public safety, beautiful parks, athletic fields, and open space, a fantastic library, thank you, Lisa, and your board I see here, and senior center, Simsbury Farm, social services, the PAC, and more. I also want to acknowledge and thank everyone who makes that happen, all of you who vote for the budgets, board members, volunteers, and staff. The questions for residents to decide, as we do every year, are basically, do we still get good value for what we pay in property taxes? Are we getting what we pay for? Can we afford this? And are we willing to pay for this? Ultimately, it's up to citizens to decide at referendum. Before I turn it over to Jeff and Wendy, I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges ahead. Simsbury, like many Connecticut towns, has challenges ahead with financial implications. This year, we are facing great uncertainty regarding future federal spending and the likelihood of increased costs being shifted to states and towns. Inflation will likely remain a challenge and concern. Health, retirement, utility costs will continue to rise. We will be monitoring state reimbursements to local special education as those costs continue to rise faster than other areas, and the state has not been paying what it has promised. Tariffs may increase the costs of construction and materials. Grand list growth and economic competitiveness with our peer towns will remain a focus. And because we have an aging school infrastructure, we will need to develop a solid and affordable financial plan to renovate many of our schools in the next few years, perhaps decades. We expect to work on this plan to begin over the summer. So challenges ahead, but grateful to everyone who works on this because I think we have a great team to figure it out. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to do his presentation.
Down goes forward. Down goes forward. Okay. Down goes forward. Everybody remember that. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Tyndall. I have the distinct pleasure and honor of serving as the chairman of the Board of Education. Really happy and appreciate everybody being here tonight. And before we get started, just want to take a moment to thank really all the Board of Education members here, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance members. We've always collaborated in the past, but see, when I have these on, I can't see anyway, so I take them off. But this year, I think, has really been just a step beyond. We've really collaborated well. We've wrestled with these issues. Lisa has laid them out very well, and we take this challenge extremely seriously. So just really appreciate we weren't butting heads, and I think that's why you voted us all here. And I just want to say that we, I think, hopefully had a great process. Just to start, down is forward. Just want to take a second and talk about our goals. How do we go about getting at the budget, right? We ground ourselves, obviously, in a process of continuous improvement. We focus on goal setting and really action planning. These 4 pillars, if you will, are really at the heart of the strategic process. None of these should surprise anybody, right? We want student growth and success. We want these students to achieve the highest level they possibly can. We want a connected culture. In other ways, we want to raise good young men and women, right? We want the best workforce we possibly can, and we want to make very strategic and deliberate investments in our community, right? So as Lisa already gave the big reveal, as they say, but the budget that we are putting forward is a little over $3.3 million, and for a 3.91% increase. So I'm going to divide this into 3 buckets, if you will really. Again, how did we get to the 3.91? Really, we'll provide some contextual information that has been impacted in our planning and provide a brief overview of these 3 buckets. The context, like kind of how we got there, the return on investment that Lisa kind of spoke to. Are we getting the value right for the dollar? And what's really driving the budget and the underlying things. Context. Right, this is what we wrestle with, right? Lisa kind of laid this out, so I'm going to just go through it pretty quickly. Each year we identify themes that develop our budget and drive our decision-making thinking in this process at the board level. This year's budget is responsive to these market adjustments and inflation, as Lisa laid out, increased negotiated contractual obligations, and really the special education needs in the areas of tuition and transportation. We'll get to that in a minute. That is a big driver of this. And we work hard to be cognizant of these key data points, such that, of COLA, the local mill rate, the reality that there's really no growth happening in the overall grand list. But I just want to take a second to say, putting all this together as a board, we take this process and responsibility extremely seriously, right? At the end of the day, I'm not just a Board of Education member, I'm also a taxpayer, right? So whatever we do affects me as much as you or really anybody else. So just want to make sure we stress that, again, we don't take this responsibility lightly. That's a very big understatement. So again, just a couple of highlights of where we're at. This slide shows kind of a benchmark of our expenditures with like districts. The per pupil expenditure is an audited metric that lines up very favorably when compared to the state average in the like districts that DERG is a group of districts that we are kind of compared to on a whole bunch of metrics. And as you see, we're lower than the state, we're lower than our DERG. And really the rank in the Hartford area, there's 27 towns in the Hartford area that we'll measure ourselves with from time to time. 27 in total, we're 15th, right? Just below average, which is kind of where you want to be, right? That's not a list you want to be higher on the list. You want to be lower on that one. So very happy about that. And then also this chart provides pertinent information relative to the budget requests and increases in these other towns. Lisa touched on this a little bit, but again, just if you look at those other ones, we are some of these surrounding towns, we're the second lowest to Granby. As Lisa touched on, some of these budget increases and requests are coming in extremely high, and we're happy that we came in at the 3.91. Obviously, we'd love to have had it lower, but that's a good number for us. The ROI, again, what are we getting for this? What are you all getting for these dollars in your education system? So from an achievement standpoint, right, while there are always areas for improvement, our students continue to excel and perform well on these standardized state accounting measures. On the top chart, the top left, is the performance on the science for 11th grade on the science level. We're number 1. And the second and third columns, obviously, the SATs for math and English, ELA. And we're sort of 2 and just behind Greenwich in that one, but lead the way in the ELA on the far column. And obviously, I'd be remiss if we left this without saying U.S. News and World Report has ranked our high school 7th in the state, something we take enormous pride in, and thank all the teachers and administration for putting the effort to get us to that ranking. Sustainable and strategic investments. This is, again, where I said we try to make very targeted and thoughtful investments with the dollars that you all entrust with us, and we take it, again, very seriously. We have this goal relative to sustainable and strategic investments, as I mentioned, and Lisa touched on this. Over the last several years, we've been focused on the much-needed Latimer Lane project. Capital upkeep and the funding for these larger projects continues to be a focus of our planning, right? As Lisa touched on, we have an aging infrastructure that we're going to have to deal with at some point. And we're going to have to start having this process, conversations in the summer about kind of how to get our arms around all of this. So main budget drivers, what's really behind the 3.91? The way we look at this, we put it in 4 buckets, right? The fixed costs, fixed costs, operational costs, staffing, and special ed, which is kind of quickly becoming a fixed cost, according to a lot of us. Because, and Lisa touched on this, that's because of the continual state mandates coupled with the decreasing funding and reimbursements that they, in previous years, have committed to us. The ECS has gone down dramatically in the last 4 years alone. That's really hindered our abilities. So fixed costs, again, standing alone, they raised at about 1.61%. Kind of what's behind that? Salaries and benefits is that probably no surprise at a 1.73. Hold on. And roughly 80% of that budget, as you can see, is total expenditures are related to staff and insurance benefits. Our contracts represent, as I said, about a 1.73 increase in the costs. We're really extremely fortunate, though, this year to realize savings in our health insurance. That's the negative 666 number there. And then the other areas really to bring to your attention are kind of no different than your home, right? The utility costs have dramatically increased over the last few years. The cost of electricity, obviously, specifically, is a real issue. Operations. Operations have increased about 1.26% over the last year's operating level. There are several areas that represent the bulk of our operational increases over the last year's spending. After a few years of not making market adjustments in the areas of building maintenance and added with new mandates relative like HVAC improvement, that was a big one that came down for us this year. It is critical that we right size these line items to ensure that we're not incurring additional costs in year to come. In other words, right, we keep kicking this can down the road, and it's just going to keep increasing in costs year after year. Costs continue to increase in these areas of software, and it was important that we reinstate the books and supplies line items that were cut last year. In addition, we are seeing some projected increases in the areas of our defined pension and retiree health insurance. Oh, sorry, went the wrong way. So special education, this is the bucket that went up about little over a percent over last year's operating level. As I mentioned earlier in the context slide, the most significant increases we're managing related to special ed are really in the areas of out-of-district tuition. This is where we may not have the capabilities to educate the student in district, so we need to send them to a different school outside of the district. Obviously, there's tuitions related and associated with those that are increasing rapidly year over year. And related, right, the other piece of the increase is the transportation associated with that. The reason for that, right, is that's not a student or a group of students taking a bus, right? It's sort of one student or two students in a van or a special, so it's very costly. Those two areas alone make up the majority of the 1% increase, and these data points I hope should illustrate the further support for our vision to creating a more comprehensive program options for all students within the complex or within the district to meet those needs. Lastly, this one's a really easy one, right? On staffing, there is no staffing increases or proposals for this year. So that will be flat. But I would be remiss to say that there were not several requests, but we found that this is an area where we could kind of hold the line this year. So rolling it all together, the 1.6 for the fixed cost, the operations at 1.26, and then the special ed at 1.04. That gets you to the 391. So in summary, let me just take a second and say, when we reviewed the buckets of fixed cost operations and special education, we've increased our budget about 3.91% over last year's expenditures. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to present this to y'all tonight. Again, we take this exercise extremely seriously. And I just want to take a second also to thank all of those who put significant time and energy into putting forward this, I hope we all agree, a very responsible and lean budget. Really, from the administration to the board members, we've had very thoughtful and sometimes very heated conversations. We didn't always agree, but I think that made for a better product at the end of the day. So let me stop there, and I can sort of turn it over to Wendy. And again, just thanks for.
Can I turn this a little? I'm trying to figure out which to look at. I want to figure out where to look here. Okay, and where's the little thingamajig? Up and down?
Down goes forward. And then you
Okay.
have your laser pointer if you need it.
I know I never use the laser pointer.
Today's the day.
Okay, good evening. I'm Wendy Maxudis. I'm the first selectman, and I'm here to tell you about the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 26. We've done this before for the Board of Finance, so for some people it's repetitive, and I will try to skip over some of the things that Lisa included in her presentation. So if you see me flip by a slide, it's because Lisa's already covered it. Okay, how's this? Okay, hold on. Let me move this in a little. Okay. So I know you can't read this, but it went out to the public, and I sent it out in my first selectmen's report. I just want to highlight a few of the things that it says in here. I want to thank our town manager, Mark Nelson, for working hard to reduce the cost of town services before passing his budget on to us. His budget resulted in over $350,000 in reductions across all departments and included the elimination of a position that we approved last year. All departments were asked to dig deep and find savings to pass on to the residents of our community after we faced 2 years of tax increases. Our board spent two nights, one very long, to come up with our budget that resulted in an additional $157,852 in cuts. We also looked at revenues, and then we do capital. The capital is all on the Board of Selectmen, so we have a capital non-recurring budget that most of the Board of Selectmen participated in doing a ranking for the first time, and we used a ranking formula, so it made our lives easier when we got to the actual budget workshops. As far as the capital improvement plan, we had some guidance from the Board of Selectmen. So Mark presented us with a capital improvement plan that was pretty bare bones to meet those needs. We do have some work to do on capital that we will move forward with doing some rankings this summer with a team that we can look at each project, use a ranking rubric to figure it out, because we have many projects that are unfunded and we need to make sure that we can hit the priorities over the next few years for the town. I also want to say that our budget was voted on unanimously by all 6 members of the board. And then a couple things I do want to say is just some of the things that we've accomplished this year is the Flower Bridge I drove by just now is open. We plan to be having burgers on the bridge there later this year. Latimer Lane opened in 2024 and is a state-of-the-art place of learning for our K-6 students. We have new sidewalks that have been completed in town, making it easier for people to get around safely. Our roads are in great shape, Tom Roy. I know you're not listening right now, but I'm saying it. So, well, I won't talk about him. Our PD, we have a great community police force, and we also have our service dog, Clifton, who now many towns in the state have copied us. We have a fully staffed HR department. We have a PD records department. Records departments, and the investments that we've made to Parks and Rec, the library, and the senior center are done so that everyone can take advantage of our facilities. Okay, so here's our Board of Selectmen. I have to say, I love our board. We have a great group. Steve Antonio is Deputy First Selectman. Heather Getz, Kevin Beal, Curtis Looney, and Diana Yeisley. We worked collaboratively with our board and town staff, who I also want to thank Amy, Melissa, and Tom for helping with everything as we've gone through it. And then this is just a little highlight of the goals that we set early in 2024, and we've accomplished many things in each one, but for economic development, we completed an MOU with the Simsbury Main Street Partnership and the Economic Development Commission. We're trying to find some projects for them to do to help us explore getting more business into town. On the technology front, we've implemented ClearGov to have a digital budget book, and we're looking at revamping the website and also adding some technology to the HR department. From the housing side, we implemented the Simsbury Housing Policy Advisory Commission, which is finalizing their report, and it includes members elected I believe, appointed from across multiple boards and commissions who've worked really collaboratively to make that happen. We have a charter revision commission also that the board put together, and they've been working very hard, meeting twice a month, I believe. Our personnel, I mentioned, we have the HR department. Public safety, we put together a memo of understanding for Simsbury Volunteer Ambulance. It's the first time that since last year, it's this 3rd year, I think, that we're funding the Simsbury ambulance, and they are getting municipal funds when previously they never did. And then for quality of life, I mentioned the Flower Bridge, the parks, the trails, the golf course. So here we are. This is all the steps that we've gone through. And right now we're at the public hearing. There's another public hearing, and then hopefully everybody gets out and votes in May. So the highlight, our budget went up 2.95%. We met the goal of staying under COLA. At the time, the inflation rate of our budget, it was 3%. And again, the mill rate went up 33.01. And as Lisa pointed out, the median home price for a $400,000 home will be about $205 a year. Some of the revenue assumptions, we had the minimal grand list growth. We always use a tax collection assumption rate of 98.5. We did get a little bit more in ECS. Some towns did not, but we did. And we are expecting some money back on the mill rate. We also implemented some new permit fees to bring in some additional revenue, and that was approved at our meeting on the 24th of March. These are just some grand list projections. Lisa had a much better one because she charted hers and I did not, but I think you had the same numbers, so I'm going to fly by this one. And then again, this is pretty much the same chart. Just shows the increases for the town budget, the Board of Ed budget, and also it does show the offset that we included to use funds so that we could help lower the mill rate for everybody in town. And we use capital reserves, which we may use health reserves, and that's something the board will be discussing later. again, the mill rate history, if everyone remembers, the reval was in '24, which our houses prices and assessments went up and down, and that also made the mill rate go down. And then we had an increase last year, and then that's the proposed 34.15, which includes the 1.14, which is an increase in the fire district mill rate, which was 1.05. So these are the things that the Board of Selectmen did on one of our long nights, on two of our nights, to make cuts to the budget. We looked at anything at any price to see what we could take out of the budget. And as you can see, we really went through the budget line by line. One thing I will tell you, I'm not going to show you the whole budget because it's pages and pages by department, revenues, and expenditures. But the information is all on the town website. If you go to the finance section and you go to the 25-26 budget, you can look at all the documents. You could look at every line item, revenue and expenses, and you could even access ClearGov and see it in the digital budget book format, which we will be having and pushing next year more than we did this year. But as you can see, we made cuts. The town manager wanted additional hours for an intern that we get from the UConn School of Public Policy. We cut that, and we did cut some of our public service agencies. We were asked to fund some furniture. We said no. As you can see, we made some cuts to police overtime, just a variety of cuts. But I will say that every department came and played ball with us, is what I would say. And Mark was really helpful, and we all kind of did this together to get here. The revenue increases that we had, we raised the building permit increase by $1. We were pretty much under all of our neighboring towns. So we increased that to get a little bit more revenue. And then we did add a little bit more for rentals. One thing that we were lucky that we were able to take advantage of that passed like days before we did our budget was the state legislature passed a change to the depreciation schedule for motor vehicles, because as they're going to MSRP. So we were able to take advantage of a higher depreciation schedule that resulted in like almost $800,000 additional to our grand list. So that was really a big deal. So the CIP, again, Lisa took my CIP and put it in her slides. But these are the only items that we funded this year. As I said, we're gonna do some capital planning workshops this summer, but you can just take a look. There's really nothing that exciting on here. You know, we always fund sidewalks, pavement. Those are kind of givens every year. The two Farms Village renovations, as everyone knows, we've invested in the building next to the high school to start a special ed program for the Board of Ed, and there are additional renovations that need to happen after the initial outlay. So we included that $400,000 here. There's many improvements we've been waiting for at Eno, the parking lot, the Station Street, that's all supposed to happen together. So some of that money is in here. And then as you can see, the Terriffill connection, that we're waiting to get that going, but those are grants and project savings, so those do not take any of our current funding or bonding. And then the Board of Ed projects, I believe Jeff mentioned them. And then this is just a chart to show you where the money's going and the bonding amount of the $3 million, which is within the Board of Finance guidance. And this chart basically, oopsie, sorry. So the Board of Finance bonding guidance was to kind of keep debt service so that it's not out of control, and we're still paying for Latimer, that they wanted us to do pretty much a $10 million bonding over 2-year periods. So it's pretty much like 10, 10, and 10. So as you can see from this chart where the $5 million is, basically, if you look at each 2 years, it comes out to about $10 million. So we're on track here. And then this is a new change that happened since we approved our budget. We were asked to make a referral to the Board of Finance on the Board of Ed CNR items that were over the traditional payback. So both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen get kind of a bucket of money for CNR items that is financed through the operating budget, and then the rest we use capital reserves for. So these were the capital reserve asks that we approved and are now coming to the Board of Finance. And then these are the CNR projects, so capital non-recurring. They're kind of the smaller capital projects that, impact the day-to-day infrastructure in town. I was just going to give you a couple of highlights on a couple of these. I'm not going to go through each one. So let me just look at my highlight sheet here. So the first one, and again, these were ranked by us, by the town, and we put together the list of priorities, and we really didn't, once it came to the budget workshop, we pretty much agreed on what we were funding. So the library, there's an underground fuel tank. The library is now heated by gas. So this has been here for a decade, and it's used for emergency generator, but it needs a yearly inspection. So right now we're going to remove that, pay to remove it. It will eliminate any environmental concerns, and it will eliminate the need to pay for these annual instructions. This one's on the next page, but we funded public security cameras at Public Works because everybody knows Public Works is out there. They have millions of dollars of equipment. So we wanted to upgrade the security coverage that's out there to protect our assets. And then Station Street, we're all waiting for Station Street to be 2 ways. I was just there the other night. That is a long light. I just have to say that. That's part of that whole Eno renovation so that it will make it easier to get around town there. And then just to highlight something for Parks and Rec, we have the Parks Boom Mower attachment replacement. The one that we have is from 2013, and this boom mower is used to mow down open spaces, grass areas along the town trails, vegetation, and overgrowth along the town's wooded trails. Again, all of these project descriptions are out there on the website if you are interested in reading up on each one. And then we have the irrigation replacement, to make sure that we can reduce the cost of irrigation, use less water on the athletic fields. And then the one other one I wanted to highlight, I think it's on this page, is the zoning regulations. So our zoning commission is working on updating the regulations to be more in line with any state changes and any other changes that may be coming. And so they're working on that. The HR performance management software, we're updating the software now that we have a new HR department, and we will have an in-house performance management system that can be used for staff. And again, this just shows the breakdown. We use 1.656 out of capital reserves, and then the traditional payback, as I mentioned, is 416. And then next steps. So here we are, a public hearing on the 8th. There will be a public hearing on the 22nd. And then we really hope that everybody will get out and vote for the budget. We worked really hard on it. We think this is the best budget that we could put forward at this time, given the environment, the economic situations. And I hope that you speak up tonight, and thank you all for coming.
Leslie Imsey, 326 Bushy Hill Road. A letter of support for the public library as proposed budget. To our finance board members and all, I am attending this meeting in support of the Simsbury Public Library's proposed budget 2025-2026. Our public library is the cornerstone of the community, connecting our residents across generations. Simsbury organizations on the library staff, Simsbury organizations rely on the library staff, the library services, the library facilities as partners in the progress of their success. Our library's programming meets the needs of all town's residents, young and old. If you notice, you look at the Senior Center newsletter, you'll see library programs are in every portion. They're in the schools, they're social services, they're reaching out to all the elderly housing. They're wonderful programs. The Simsbury Public Library is one of 2 Connecticut libraries nationally ranked as star libraries by the Library Journal. It has won the Connecticut Library Association Excellence in Public Library Service Award 4 times in 8 years. It was a library in Connecticut to be recognized by a bicycle-friendly business, which I believe was our town goal. And it has a dedicated Friends of the Library group. It boasts an award-winning teen services librarian and business career center, and welcomes over 300,000 visitors each year. We need you to support this budget proposal to maintain the quality of these services provided by the public library. Some new challenges that people in the audience may not know of, I'm sure that the Board of Finance and everyone else does, but some new challenges for the town's budget. I know you're aware of the federal funding that was cut to public libraries in March. The loss of these federal funds affect all public libraries, and recently our state of Connecticut was informed that these monies stop prior to the end of the fiscal year. What are the public libraries programs federal grants fund that are being cut? They're the summer reading programs, a popular program with elementary students and senior adults. The ebooks, the audiobooks, books for the blind, career services, and the interlibrary loan program, which is a long-standing program, a process which a library requests material for patrons from other libraries and across the state or universities. These are some of the programs provided by the federal grants. Well, they're cut very soon, and they'll have to come out of this year's budget. So how will we be able to keep these programs going? In closing, I'd like to state again that our public library is the jewel of this community. Here you are. You know, we use all of the facilities. We use every program. As a 35-year resident of Simsbury, my family and I continue to benefit from the services the program our library produces and provides. I hope that you'll support the proposed budget now to be able to maintain these. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Gilbert on 126 Hot Meadow Street. As I saw the budget as it was presented today, I did not see the purchase of 2 Farms Village. I saw the renovation projected, but I didn't see where the actual purchase of the building is placed. So that was my question.
Hi, Charlie Gary, 12 Highview Road. I'm here for the first time, and I've been here for 29 years. I've never been to one of these. And first of all, I want to thank all of you. You do an amazing job. It's a very hard job, I'm sure. I guess the reason why I'm here is because I've been looking at my taxes over the last 3 years, which you pointed out has gone up significantly. I look at the compounded annual growth and I'd say, you know, by the time 2030 rolls around, my taxes will exceed my actual mortgage. And that's a problem for me because I just turned 65 this year. And so for the first time ever, I will not be voting for this budget. I will vote again. I've never voted against one of the budgets before, but it's just unsustainable. And I know you guys know that. You've expressed that. So I'm just want to agree with that sentiment and figure, you know, we've got to start thinking about, you know, a different way to fund these things. That's all. Thank you.
Good evening. Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. I brought a short note from Diane Nash, 5 Marywood, and she would like to acknowledge the hard work and year after year the confidence that voters have in this process, which is a testament to the ability and diligence of officials, and our AAA bond rating is evidence of that. She wanted to express that we should be really careful about using these smoothing mechanisms and making a budget that's based on expected revenues and future income that's based on what may be unfunded state mandates that we're on record for asking to be repealed. So her bottom line is please don't compromise, and that those cautionary notes are ways that towns and companies get into financial trouble. So she wants to encourage you, don't compromise on the attention to detail and ethics that has served us so well for so long. Okay, now I'm back to being myself. On behalf of myself, I would like to thank you for the hours of work and attention to detail and really true civic discourse that goes into this budget. And that's why the town passes it every year, is because we know what goes into it. And I wanted to talk about a proposal at the Charter Revision Committee that we would automatically pass our budget if less than 9% of the population votes for it. I'm strongly against that for several reasons. The first one is that we are changing our town constitution to solve a problem that doesn't exist, i.e. that our budget would be rejected. And we don't have that problem in town. So I think instead of solving a problem that doesn't exist, we should prevent the problem from happening. And all of us that are here, and I'm so thrilled to see so many people here, should commit to going to vote and getting other people to vote, because really voting is a sacred responsibility, and we shouldn't accept that so few people vote for the budget. So the final thing I wanted to say is that I think, the work that goes into the budget reflects the values that we have in town. And one of the things that I think matters a lot is that substance matches appearance, and that's something that I've always appreciated about the town's attention to detail, and the Board of Finance is a manifestation of that. And I have some comments about 2 specific projects. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I think that there are ways that we could spend less money now and long-term related to 2 landscaping issues. One is outside Town Hall, and the other is the islands on Iron Horse. And we have access to some settlement funds through Farmington River Watershed. And in general, I feel like if something's there, it's alive, and you don't have to spend any time taking care of it, that's great. So I'm just making that as a small additional suggestion. And I also just want to, emphasize the importance of kind of cross-disciplinary discussions to come to the best long-term decisions. And it's quantifiable that bad decisions are made much more often if it's a quick decision than if you take more time making the decision. Thank you.
Ellen Wildman, 28 Knoll Lane, former special ed teacher. So I was, how many kids are affected by that 890,000?
We'll get to
Oh, get to questions later.
we'll get all the questions.
Okay, this is all yay, go budget? Oh. Okay.
We're taking everyone's comments and questions.
So, but if you have other questions, get them out and we'll respond to them after. Is that the only question?
We'll ask Matt to address that after everyone's spoken. Okay. Go into a little in-depth there. Does anyone
My name's Chris Gasner. I live at 260 Farms Village. I've lived in this town since 1962. The reason I'm here tonight is I feel like there's some bad times coming for us. I feel like we're living in a very bad time right now. In the last few days, the country's lost $6 trillion. What's happening in the future? Do we even know? I hate to be a downer, but I think this is not a time to be acting as business as usual. That we need to tighten our belts. The budget needs to be painful. Not just like, oh, well, we start out with the money that we have and then we do what we can. We don't say, well, this is what I want, and how would I get the money? I think that my household doesn't go up in income 2% a year. I don't know whose does. So I guess I feel like we need to work a lot harder. And I really appreciate all the hard work that's been done. With volunteers, people who don't get paid, spend their time to work for the town. We have a beautiful town. It's one of the prettiest towns in New England. Beautiful plantings, beautiful architecture, beautiful resources for all the people here. But we need to work harder. So I'm not used to public speaking, so you have to excuse my nervousness.
I'm Mary Ann O'Neill. I live at 1 West Street. We've been a member of the Simsbury population for 55 years. And I just really want to thank everyone here for the continued support that you've always given the public library. It's one service and resource, I think, in town that it literally serves everyone from birth to the eldest senior that we have in town. I just wanted to share with you a few stats just to show how, and I don't think this is just limited to the library, but how effective the town budget is managed by different departments. And I will be speaking to the library staff and the library director as far as what numbers we have and how we come in comparison as it was made before to other towns. Our library is open 7 days a week for 42 weeks of the year. The rest of the time in the summer, we don't open on Sundays, but we have 33 service desks open during all hours. The library budget is 6.8% of the total town budget. 71% of that budget are personnel costs, which are covered by almost all by contracts. 9.8 of the budget is facility expenses, and 0.7 of the budget is program expenses. There's a calculation that's done nationwide where they determine what the return on investment is for libraries. And for our town, the return on the investment is $5.94. The library attracts volunteers, as so many of the other boards do. This year, we had a total of 1,456 volunteer hours, an estimated savings to the library of $48,762. And that's based on the United Way of Connecticut's value estimate of a volunteer hour. And again, going back to some of the very good stats that we have with education and all the budgets, we're ranked 9th out of 106 libraries in Connecticut for the percentage of residents that have library cards. That number changes every year because any that are expired and not renewed don't count. We have the second highest internet session per capita in Connecticut, which is a real resource for people that can't afford high internet costs or the computers themselves. We have the second highest circulation circulation per capita, and we have the 11th highest in reference transaction. Only 67 cents per capita the library's operating budget is for programs annually. We ranked 86 out of 172 libraries in Connecticut by program expenditures per capita. That's just in the middle. We ranked 129th out of 172 libraries in Connecticut by the percent program expenditures for town budget. $7.31 per capita is spent on materials. And just going back to a comment that Leslie made, we were one of the 2 3-star libraries in Connecticut. The other one was Westport. And for that year that we attained the same level of excellence as they did, our budget was $1.8 million. Theirs was $5 million. We're getting a really good return on our investment and big bang for the buck. And thank you so much for all you do and your continued support.
My name is Karen Jacob. I live on 9 Redstone Drive, Weetog. I have no facts, and I have facts, but I have no numbers to impress you with. When I did my daycare, I used to bring them to the library for story hour. They came and they made latkes. They did Easter activities. Nobody in my daycare was Jewish, but that's okay. I did have a Jewish girl that we brought to the Easter activities. Parents were fine with that. So it gave them a chance to experience things that they would not ordinarily do. I can't tell you how distressed I was when they said that the Interloan Library was going to be discontinued. I use it. Matter of fact, I have to pick up a book from use of it. I belong to a book club, and they don't supply the books. I can't get it on Libby. Libraries don't have it, which means I have to buy it, and I really don't want to spend $40 on a book. But the Simsbury Interloan Library has always come through for me. So I just want to say I have nothing but praise for the libraries. I appreciate their liberal, banned books. If you haven't read, I think it's Tanya Makes Three. It's a children's story. Brings tears to my eyes. I have a shirt that says I read banned books, and I found them all in the library, and I've read most of them, except 50 Shades of Grey. But anyway, I really think the library deserves all the support that it can get. Thank you.
What's that?
I never follow any act very well. Wasn't going to say anything tonight because I appreciate everybody's efforts, but I am nothing but discouraged when I get budgets like this. My understanding is there's approximately 400,000 square feet of vacant office space in this town already. There's probably going to be more in the next year or two. The grand list hasn't grown in a couple of years. I actually anticipate the grand list is actually going to go down. What are we going to do for budgets as the grand list goes down? Are we still going to try to spend this kind of money? Are we going to try to take some preemptive action at some point? Or are we just going to keep pretending it's here and tax everybody to death? Most of you know I have a fair amount of rental property. My rates are incredibly low in comparison to everyone else's, especially on the residential side. I have fought really hard not to call my tenants up and say, look, your rent's going up by $500 a month. That's okay, right? Not a problem, just pay me, so that I can continue to pay my taxes in town. I don't want to do that. May have to at some point. Not really looking forward to that. I'm sorry, I'm sort of rambling, because I didn't really plan to get up here. I would just ask that you look at where this money's coming from, where it's going to come from in the future, and spend it like it was yours. I have to. Please do the same.
Holly McGrath, 2 Old Barge Road. I'm a resident, grew up here. I've come back with a family. I'm also on the Library Board of Trustees. You've heard a lot about the wonders of the library. I could reiterate all of them. But I also want to speak to just the power of the people in this room, the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, all the residents, everybody that comes together in this town. I think that's what we're voting on, is especially in dark times. We need to be a strong community and support the services that are going to help people through dark times. And the library does exactly that. It supports people, and that's because our professional staff at the library, and especially our director, Lisa Michelli, uses those funds that you give her wisely to maximize the value and to be really, spend them wisely. What you might not realize is that the library staff specifically participates and builds relationships with community partners. So a lot of our programs come through partnerships with the Simsbury Historical Society. Some of you serve on that or volunteer with it. The Simsbury Land Trust, the Simsbury Garden Club, Social Services, Parks and Recreation, Library for Accessible Books, the Simsbury Grange. All of these partners make our community great, and they work through making the library even better. The library also partners with all of our schools, public and private, and also partners with neighboring libraries, including Avon, Bloomfield, Granby, and Farmington. All of that increases the value and lowers the cost of our programming services. And a big shout out to, of course, our Friends of the Library, which is our funding many volunteer hours and fundraising that helps subsidize our library. So I just want to thank you for continuing to support the library, and just know that the library will be here for the town when they need us to.
Good evening, all. My name is Pradeep Bajaj. I'm at 12 Masako Street. Been a resident here since 1993. 2 kids, grew up here, everybody's happy. I thank you all for all your effort. But one of the ways I need you to take a look at is at what point of taxes, of each individual taxes, will people start thinking this is just too much? If you visualize that number now and plan that out as to when will you reach there, you've got to realize that there's a limit. There's a limit to the services that people use. There's a limit to how much we can extol the town and say it does such a great work. I see the same kind of service all throughout the years that I've lived here. I've enjoyed them, more so when the kids were home, not so much now. But the taxes keep going up. There's a limit. Board of Education cost keeps going up. I think you need to take a look at what negotiated salaries, contracts, and so on. There's a limit to all those things. The number of students doesn't keep going up quite that much, but the costs keep going up. I understand there's reality, but the other reality is there's a limit to how much you are going to be able to tax everybody. That's my concern. Just be aware. Just work on that. And not just, yes, there'll be money. You'll be on the boards for the next few years, so you're looking at your term. Look beyond that. Seriously look beyond that and say, okay, it's not going to be my problem next time, it'll be somebody else's, but please look at it now. That's my appeal. Thank you.
Ken Williams, 1 Candlewood Court, Simsbury. I guess we're all Simsbury. Thank you very much for all the efforts you put into the budget preparation. I would just add that and encourage a look at the demographics. I didn't see any. Like, what is the current population? What is the historical population? What is the future forecast of population? What is the mix of the population? How many people over 65? How many people of school age children? What is the demographics related to the student population? What is the current historical future? Very dependable. If you look at those, you know what the costs are going to be, or at least what major drivers are going to be. What are the major drivers? The gentleman was talking about the, other factors that drive revenue. What is the mix of? He was mentioning there's a lot of retail space that is empty. What is that? Are there any? Is there any analysis of what that is, and will it correct? We have been in a pretty good economical environment so far. Why is that empty? What are the forecasts of the housing stock, the business stock in town? I would just encourage that. Some of that kind of data would, I think, inform all the residents. They say, I've seen a case in a town not too far away where the population aged out of child households. They had this beautiful high school. It was half empty. It would help just to understand where some of these drivers of the cost of the budget. It may not have an impact on this particular year, but it will certainly say, well, we may have to spend today for tomorrow. I know we're doing that anyway, but I don't see any good information that we're utilizing to inform our decisions demographically. I just encourage that. Thank you.
Jose Oyola, 4 Whitney Lane. I just had a question. There was a post not too long ago from a realtor offering, I believe it was a building in Heartland or in a nearby area, which basically said low taxes, but you can access Simsbury public education. I didn't know if there was any clarification about that or something like that. It seems just so odd that outside of the town would be able to use the public school funding to, take advantage of it. So I just didn't know if anyone here could add more clarification to that.
Again, my name is Ellen Gilbert. I'm 126 Hot Meadow Street, which is Talcott Acres. It's it's a condo complex. And actually, we are right next door to where the Hartford Insurance Company used to be. And the important thing that I want to say here is actually in keeping with the last few speakers, in that we've been seeing our taxes go up and up, and I go to so many meetings here in town since I retired. I go to Board of Selectmen meetings. I go to Charter Revision. I go to Wetlands. I go to those meetings so I can learn about what's going on in town. And I can tell you, I can appreciate that people are upset that it's going up the number that it is. I can tell you I have sat in those rooms and listened to those budget cuts and this is what we want, but this year it's not going to happen. So I know how much work has gone into that. I also have the opportunity right now, because there are more public in this room right now than I have seen maybe since December. I want you to know that we've talked about, and we are at risk, that like the Hartford Insurance Company property, if they put 580 apartments, duplexes, and single-family homes for rent, who's going to pay for the ambulance service, the fire service, the police department, the schools? It's going to be us, the homeowners. And so I'm using this opportunity for you to wake up. We don't have a newspaper that gives the community the information like the Granby Drummer, which I just read the first time this week, and it blows my mind because it talks about the selectmen meeting. It talks about all the different boards. It talks about so much. I wish we had it, because our town would be so much more healthy if everybody knew what was going on. So that is my point. Thank you.
We approve budgets is annually, and the charter permits us to approve budgets through supplemental appropriations. The way that works is it was presented at the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance. We had a public hearing that was noticed on the paper, and it was approved separately. And that part of Two Farms Village was funded with $1 million from capital reserves, some money we had saved. That was done, I think, March or February. Supplemental process. And it was for special education, which I'll let Matt speak on. The question was raised, do we do analysis on population? We actually do quite a bit. In October, the Board of Education does their population projections. Amy, if you could pull up the letter that we did before the tri-board. Oh, boy. Better? All right. Before the tri-board, our board has put together a 29-page letter that does go into demographics. It goes into economic development. If you could sort of scroll through that, Amy. And I encourage, it's on the town website and the Board of Finance budget page, and it goes through just a ton of information. It goes through how much open space we have, per capita income, per capita median income, some demographics. So we look at multiple areas for demographics, so I'll just put that up there and you can go through it over time at your leisure. But there's 29 pages, very in-depth. So if anyone has an interest, that's the background where we start the budget with. There's also a bunch of information online. There's something called Municipal Fiscal Indicators, which CTOPM puts out. Those compare all towns in multiple indicators. There is something called EdSite with the Connecticut Department of Education, where you can look up how our schools compare with others. So all the boards do that research and look at it in part of preparation. There's a ton of data that we look at. This document does summarize a lot of the data. I'm going to turn it over to Matt. If you could talk about why we did Two Farms Village and the question about special education, which, how many students does it serve and what sort of age group? Sure.
There you go. All right.
Another question that was asked, students living outside of our district,
Yeah, so Heartland, was that your question? Yeah, so, I mean, Neil can speak to it a little bit. Students in Heartland have a voucher system for their high school. They can choose, I think, multiple high schools to go to, right? Right. So we actually receive funding from the district. It's like a voucher system, but they do have the ability to make that decision. Yeah.
but we get reimbursed for that.
We get reimbursed and it goes to the town. Those are the tuition dollars. Yeah.
That's the non-tax revenue.
Correct. Yeah. To run a high school.
That pays for their high school students
Right.
to go to other places.
Distributes it out.
Thank you.
Is that the cost of what it would cost here in Simsbury? I'm sure are they paying for the full cost, or are they just paying a percentage of it? It's, I don't know if it's dollar for dollar, but it's.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
It's appropriate. Okay. Appropriate to ask a question?
Go for it.
When I went to Simsbury High School, there were approximately 4,000 students. School was about half the size it is now. Answer me why we need additional space when there's half the number of students in that school and it's twice the size. And I know that's a generalization. I know that's not exactly it. Why do we need additional space?
So additional space is the purchase of the building? Is that what you're referring to? I would say, you know, when we look at students with these needs, we talk about your least restrictive environment. I don't want to get over technical with it, but these are not students that are educated in the general population. And education is a lot different than it was when you and I went to high school in terms of how we utilize space.
So there's 10 or 15 students per class now instead of
Not at all.
25.
No. Our average class size is about 22 to 25. And we have that data all available if you want to see it.
For folks that are interested,
Yeah.
if you go on the town website and look at agendas, documents are required to post, and there's a lot of background data.
All right. I mean, we may have some smaller elective offerings that have small classes, but our core classes are all 22 to 25, elementary through high school.
And how did we all fit there?
I wasn't there. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Mark, that I wanted to direct to you, one of the questions was, when we do development, how do we evaluate the fiscal impact that it might have on the budgets? I know you do that. You look at revenue and costs, but can you talk about how that is evaluated so that we can do our long-term planning?
Sure, thanks for that. And for those who didn't hear the question, it's about, you know, evaluation. How do we evaluate development projects in terms of generating fiscal impact analysis and things that will help our elected and civic leaders make the best decisions? You know, what we've heard here in some of the questions, you know, I've written down a couple of them that really struck home on this issue about development and the long-term planning that we need to do if we need to maintain sustainable budgets. Typically, the answer to the question is that the developer is often asked to, at their expense, provide analysis for the town and for our decision makers relative to things like, well, is this development going to bring in X number of kids? What's the fiscal impact to our school district and so forth? We particularly look at the ability of our infrastructure to handle increased developments. We're talking water, sewer, police, public safety. We heard tonight, I think, in one public comment about the impact of these developments on the need for more ambulance services, for example. These are complex things that every municipality has to wrestle with. I will say, having only been here a little over a year, that Simsbury is doing a good job of that. I think when the developer gives us a consultant's package, we should continue to view those somewhat skeptically. Obviously, they were paid for by the developer that wants to come into Simsbury and do whatever they want to do. But typically, my experience has been that, you know, contrary to some public comment, those consulting reports are pretty accurate, right? And so you look at the size of the units that are proposed. Are these single, one bedrooms? Are they two bedrooms, and so forth? But we've got, and the Board of Finance has done a terrific job with the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen at taking a longer, deeper dive into the budget. I just want to clarify one point while I got the microphone. We started on this budget back in November. And in fact, I have a letter from Superintendent Matt Curtis talking about the capital planning and what the bonding requirements would be. His letter to me is dated December 12th. So a lot of thinking went into the budget that's been presented. And I just want to take 1 minute to thank all of the town staff that have been working not just on the budget, but on several complex development proposals. To the chair's question, these are difficult decisions for elected leaders to make. Is this development going to go forward as planned? Is it going to be changed? What's the impact on the grant list? One thing that we all know in this room is that no development means zero grant list growth if you adjust for increased values. So you can have zero growth and still have a levy that increases when you've got revals, hitting us. But at the end of the day, this is the pivotal point for Simsbury in its history. As far as I can see, looking back and looking forward, what type of development, if any, is the town going to accept? And to the chair's question, there's a good amount of analysis that's being done in that. And thank you for the question.
So we get about 1.7 million in total. 1.5 of that is an IDA grant. It's a special education grant. We fund a lot of our special education teachers. The other grant is called a Title I grant, a couple $100,000 that individual schools that qualify for that. A little bit of flexible spending. We utilize it on tutors, support systems, some instructional materials, things like that. So. Well, we'd have to adjust, but early indications are that federal funding is not going to be touched, but we'll have to see. All right.
Discussion. So this is sort of a formal process. As you can see, we're now in the board discussion. We're going to go through a lot of workshops. Planning. We're going to wait 5 minutes and let everyone clear out who doesn't want to hear this really interesting discussion. Thank you, everyone who was able to come. What? They don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, move over there.
All right, so what we're gonna do now is just sort of go through, the resources we have. We have a few things we need to take care of. We have the Board of Ed, CNR proposal, and Amy, do you have that? The Board of Ed, the second tranche of the capital reserves. So we'll be doing that, that's gonna be noticed, you'll notice the hearing we approved, as the amended budget with those proposals. That's not gonna impact the mill rate, that's just capital reserves. We had talked about using health reserves instead of general fund reserves. It's like the story of my life. We had talked about using health reserves instead of general fund balance. The thought there was twofold. One, it is a best practice to use specific reserves if you can, and you have them before you use general reserves. Part of the reason for that is, should we need reserves somewhere else, you can't tap health reserves for like the loss of federal funding for special education, but you can tap general fund reserves. So the thinking there is to preserve as much general fund reserves as we can to provide the town some options there. Then we had talked about possibly reassigning, we currently have general fund reserves just for health, maybe splitting that between health and special, making that a little bit broader because we're facing, I would say, tremendous uncertainty at the federal level. I hope Matt's right and that we don't lose education dollars, but I think there's a chance. Here's the additional Board of Education projects that have been proposed and recommended by the Board of Selectmen. There is more than sufficient dollars in capital reserves to pay for that. This was a timing issue. Next year, that'll be submitted as part of the regular budget, just as these are new dollars, so we're moving that forward. Amy, because that is new, can you just walk us through what we have in capital reserves right now? I don't know.
That's just you. I'm sorry.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So projected for the end of fiscal year '25, we have about 4.6 million in unassigned. And then based on the proposed budgets presented tonight, the town anticipates to use 883,000 of that. The 772,000, that list of projects that you just reviewed. This gives us an unassigned balance of 2.9 million. And then the Two Farms Village purchase will come out of this reserve. So that leaves us a balance as of 6/30/26 at an anticipated 1.9 million.
And Amy, we'll get an update from you at the April 22nd as to year end where we think we'll end. But our last estimate was we thought we would have perhaps 2 million to contribute to this fund at the year end. Okay, so that's where we are with that. I did ask Amy, is this the right fund to take it out of at this point? And I'm going to let you correct me if I said it wrong, but her recommendation was to use this and use the other funds later. We can adjust later in future budgets, but to keep it clean, using capital reserves because we do have sufficient at this point and we do anticipate it being replenished. So without objection, that's what we'll put forward to the public hearing, if folks are okay with that. Okay? Then the use of health reserves. Amy, can you talk us how that would work? And Amy and Melissa talk about what the motions would look like and how that would change how we view because the numbers we presented will change.
Right. So, actually, it's easier to talk through if I.
Before you move up, I'm sorry. The $1 billion for the Two Farms Road. When do we know what that exact number is?
Closing is supposed to be by July 31st, so we'll know by mid-June.
So here we have the use of fund balance for that 450,000. This will be removed. And then, the 450,000 between the Board of Education and the town budget, those budgets will be reduced. So if we did, say 250,000 from the town budget and then 200,000 from the Board of Education budget, your budget dollars will go, that looks off. Your budget dollars will go down, and then this will zero out. So you're basically just reallocating the use of fund balance as a revenue source and reducing your operating budgets by the amount of that $450,000. And then when we put the money into the health insurance fund and pay those premiums, we will be about $450,000 short. And then based on that shortage, we're projecting a loss in the health insurance fund, which we will then utilize that fund balance to cover.
So it doesn't in any way change services,
No,
and it doesn't in any way change the mill rate.
no.
But what it does do is it preserves general fund reserves if we have to respond to something other than health. So it gives us 450 to respond. If we didn't do that, we would have 400,000 less to respond to a contingency, a non-health contingency. So I just wanted to make people see the budgets then come down to, let's see, percentage. Amy, those don't seem right. Is that right?
I just put it back.
Oh.
So if we did to.
Okay, so it looks like we cut the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education budgets. Did we cut those budgets? No. Can you just say that really loud? Did we cut those budgets?
We did not cut their
Okay,
budgets.
it's just the way where we're putting the 450. So I just want to make very clear to the public, this is not a cut of budgets. This is just a use of reserves, but it does change the way the budgets look. You see the 450 disappeared. It is now hidden in the reductions in the operating budget. So anyone have any questions? Understand that? Okay. Pardon? Yes.
Why do you take it out of the operating, the 250, cover that health thing? I don't understand that.
Because we're saying your costs have gone down because we're gonna, it's almost a transfer in. Would we show it as a transfer in?
Okay. So you're just applying the health reserves to the.
Yeah, because your budgets are net. If we showed the true cost, the total cost, it would be higher, and then we'd show the income coming in. If we need it.
So Wendy, in the Board of Selectmen budget, the major medical line item actually will be reduced by whatever amount we choose to, how we split it between, we talked about maybe doing 75-25 between the Board of Ed and the town. So yeah, your actual line item will go down.
So that's where the health reserves are, in that line item?
No.
No, so the health reserves will go down. We pay our internal service fund, that's our health insurance fund, so think of it like a Cigna. So we pay our premiums into that fund. The employer pays a share and the employee pays a share. The employer share, we are not taxing for up to that 450,000. We're gonna say, we're not gonna tax for 450,000. We are going to transfer all of our premiums into the health insurance fund minus that 450,000, and then we are going to have a loss in that health insurance fund of that 450,000, which is then going to be used by that fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The reason why we're doing that is our policy states that our health reserves should have between 20 and 25% reserves. We're at 35%. We just got that confirmed with Lockton. We cannot use that for anything other than health. Okay.
I just didn't understand how that all works.
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated, but the bottom line is you can still spend what you were planning to spend, and it doesn't change the mill rate. It's just where that 450 gets tucked in. So it looks like a reduction in expenses, but you're still spending the same amount because we're using reserves to help fund some of those costs.
When we track expenditures, though, because at the beginning of your presentation, Lisa, we talked about the increase in expenditures, et cetera, do all those statistics still stay the same? Or will those drop as well now?
No, those drop as well.
That's a little dangerous, though, right? You gotta remember that our expenditures were up by 3.9%, even though it looks like they're up by.
So this theoretically creates a cliff for next year. So if you remember, Lisa had mentioned that we have $850,000 in assigned fund balance for the potential to address any cliff. But yeah, it does create a cliff for next year, theoretically.
So how do we want to track that, like, year over year when we talk about it? Like, the 3.9 is just stuck in my head, so like the 3.9 should still be 3.9 for certain purposes, and we should say, oh, it was 3.2 if we net out the health offset to it. Because when we start with the budget, I get your point, and we're gonna try to smooth it with the 250 now and all that, but I just feel like we're gonna confuse ourselves.
So it's
to me this year, it's weird because the two biggest expenditure buckets are much bigger than the mill rate increase. You said this before. So it's like we're already, and it's okay because we're giving money back to the taxpayers, so that's not a bad thing. But there's still a lot of work to do from expense management perspective. And if we lose that by reducing it artificially here, I just worry that we're gonna lose the discipline around. We gotta take 3.9 to like 2.5 at some point.
So as far as keeping track of it, that is going to be easy because you're going to see a huge spike next year to make up for it, unless our premiums start to come down.
Right.
There is
So
one
that cliff will almost like make it happen.
right,
Okay.
unless we have some good news on the health insurance front, or there is enough in our fund balance where, say, we don't need to increase our premiums that much, and we could do something alternative. But as far as tracking goes, it's gonna spike. So you're gonna have an increase on the town side of about 200,000 and on the board of 250,000 right off the bat.
And we're gonna have a spike either way with the 450.
Sure.
So it's just a
Numbers are
matter of,
numbers,
yeah, it's
So I don't
just.
need to belabor it, I just think it's something we're gonna need to be aware of.
One of the things I've been frustrated in municipal budgeting is we don't do gross budgeting, we do net budgeting. So you kind of lose track. I like the way that, Matt, you did your budget this year showing the net out with the parentheses so that you do actually see the gross. So maybe that's something we could think about for the operating budgets and the Board of Selectmen so that we could sort of see that and track that. But I think that is the biggest challenge. I will say for the past 15 years, we have generally used health reserves as an offset, so this is not unusual. It gets done regularly. Anytime there is some, we try and use it. And we're trying, Lockton did recommend we use no more than a third of the excess so that you don't create too big a cliff that has to be made up in the next year. You only use a third of it, which
I
is.
think all of our mechanisms make sense.
No, but I think you make an excellent point because we have really trimmed this budget very tight. Next year, it's gonna hurt if we have to do the same thing. Next year, we start hitting services. This year, we were able to do it and maintain services. Next year, we should prepare, and this is the time to begin preparing for that. Unless we see some improvement already with just the economic conditions, our ARC payment is likely to go up. We might even need to make an additional ARC contribution. So that's one thing we know that's out there in terms of a risk. But if folks are comfortable with that, we'll give the okay to, I know Melissa has already drafted a motion, and we'll review that motion at our next meeting for health reserves. If people want more time to think about it, we don't have to do that.
Is there any scenario where this is a bad guy? It just feels like a no-brainer for us because it's preserving the greatest amount of flexibility in using the reserves. Is there any scenario where this doesn't work to our collective advantage? It feels like it's a no-brainer.
The only scenario, and Lisa and I have talked about it, is there is proposed legislation where it would change the health insurance plans to essentially, we have health insurance plans
versus a whole bunch of things
Right.
that happen on the other side. Yeah. Okay, it still seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. So that's, thank Amy and Melissa for working on that. That was a little bit complicated, so appreciate the work on figuring how to literally write the motion on that one. It was not so easy, so thank you for that. All right, so we'll.
Did I cut someone off on a question? You got that look on your face.
Todd.
I do, it just, why isn't this a revenue?
Because we're using, are you saying because we're using reserves, it should be a transfer in?
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I'm thinking about Art's comment. I mean, you could always just have a separate line and keep the budget pure and show that negative 250 and negative 200, and then you can compare budget to budget. I mean,
Which is
you
honestly
start
what
doing
we're
that,
gonna
there's
end up
probably,
doing next year anyway, when we look at this, I'm sure, because we're gonna always
Right.
wanna know with and without.
right. I mean, there's probably a lot of lines you could do that, and this could get. But then, you know, I'm sitting here thinking about that, and then it's going to be a negative 250, negative 200. Why is it a negative expense?
No, that's a great question. Amy, could we do it that way? Could we do it, keep the numbers the same and then show a revenue off transfer in?
So I wouldn't show a transfer in. We can take the gross budget for the medical line item and do a reduction of, say, the $200,000, and then do a net number. Well, I wouldn't be the net. It would just be one showing the gross and then a reduction of 200,000. The reason that I wouldn't do a transfer in from the health insurance fund is because then it looks like from the bond rating agencies that you're utilizing health insurance fund money to balance the budget.
Oh, for the general fund, okay. No, yeah, because it has to stay within the fund.
Right.
Is that, so it's not a transfer in, it's a use within the fund itself.
Right.
Okay, does that make sense to you?
I
will
share
defer.
just to the question. I think it's kind of analogous to what happened with ARPA. It's actually the reverse, because you showed ARPA as an appropriation and increased expenses, even though really it was a grant.
Right.
So in the next year, you had to keep in mind that that number was artificially high because you
Right.
pumped all that ARPA money. This is the reverse of that.
Right.
And I think the ARPA experience kind of tells us that we know we'll keep an eye on this next year. The question I would pose to Amy, just back to the cliff issue, is it any more of a cliff to use health reserves than it is to use general fund reserves? And I think the answer is no, but just that's what I want to get out there for the
Right.
record share. I think it's helpful to the board to realize that no-brainer is, I think, the right term. So we support that technical term, but I think we do have to track it, and it kind of reminds me what happened with ARPA.
Exactly, yeah, because we had to show budgets net of ARPA to do the year-to-year comparison. It was a nightmare, but yeah.
It made it actually challenging for us in my budget last year.
It-
because
yes.
I had to asterisk that and explain it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it looked like, but we got it.
No, that's a good point.
Just one more. Can
Yeah.
you just, Amy, scroll down a tiny little bit to see the mill rate?
Is that the right? I thought we were at 34.16.
I'm stuck on the fact that we're not at 2.83 anymore. When you moved the 450, we're at 2.78 under the percentage change for net expenditures. So
What was it? It was 283?
it was 283.
Oh, you're right, that
And I
does.
don't know where that extra that money is.
You don't want it to be better? No?
I like this, but I don't know where the money was.
No, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
Good catch.
Oh. Well, good night. Okay, so we have that, Board of Ed, CNR, capital reserves, health reserves we're gonna do. Capital contingency, I don't even know if we need to do this anymore, because I feel like we're not gonna get any federal dollars, so we can accommodate a supplemental appropriation if you want, or we could budget a capital. So give some thought to that for the next thing. We don't have the same problems we've had in the previous year on that. Amy, can you give some thought as to whether we should do a motion to reassign general fund reserves? We have it now all for health, or whether we should do it more generally, and can you recommend what to do on that one at the 850. If we decide we want to do that. In terms of buckets that we have, we just saw we've got about 1.9 million in capital reserves. We think that'll go up by another 2 million, so almost 4 million in capital reserves to kick off next year's budget or to deal with any crisis that comes from the federal government. Health reserves we'll be using. The Board of Ed has non-lapsing fund to deal with the any surprises on special education or if they lose federal dollars. How much is in the non-lapsing fund, including assignments?
We started the beginning of fiscal year 25 with 297,000. When we closed out fiscal year 24, we added 562,000. This budget year, we had planned to use 297,000. This leaves an anticipated balance as of 6/30/25 of 562,000. However, the last time I did projections, we were going to be short in special education and electricity. We anticipated to receive additional excess cost funding, so that will take care of that. But we are still keeping an eye on that electricity overage. So more to come on that when I finalize my projections. So right now, there's just a placeholder for 250. So if that does come to fruition, they'll have about 312,000 left.
Which is not an exorbitant amount to have, and would not even be able to accommodate a full new student if one arises. So we'll leave that where that is. Okay, so I want to give members of the board an opportunity to say anything on the budget generally. Start with you, Mike. Do you have anything?
The thing that keeps swirling around in my head is, and Amy and I talked about this briefly earlier, the assumptions we've made on interest income, right, in this budget. Is there a risk there?
It's a good question. Amy, you want to talk about that? We're at 375?
So we are at 375. I mean, it's.
That's the assumption, or that's what we're getting right now?
No, we're getting right now 4.5 and 4.1, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's on the page here, yeah.
Yeah. So, whether in a year from now it's going to be 375, 3, I have no idea. So,
but
we've got like a half a point of room there, right?
And
I think it's a fair question, but we do have some room if they were to adjust.
Right.
Because we are conservatively positioned enough.
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
We think we
After
are.
Thursday and Friday.
Right, who knows? I mean, this was based, that's a fair question. Can you reach out to Fiducia and just see if they've changed any of their recommendations based on the last few
We've
weeks?
heard from them recently, and they haven't changed
right.
their positions. Right? And no one has a crystal ball, right?
Right.
I asked Matt for his. He said he couldn't find it.
I don't think they anticipated the events of the last 7 days.
That's true. Might be
Yeah.
worth.
So, I mean, just for additional context, I reached out to our bond advisor because we have to go out to bond this year. And typically he has a good sense of, do we do it early spring? Do we do it in the summer? Do we do it in the fall? Like, what are you seeing? And he said for the first time, he's like, I can't tell you. So that's how uncertain it is right now.
Okay. I mean, one of the reasons we have general fund reserves at 15 to 17% is precisely for situations like this. So we are in a well-positioned to adjust quickly if we need to. Are there any other defensive steps you think the town should be taking at this point, or are you comfortable where we are?
I'm fine with where we are right now. We're still holding at like the 4.5 to 4.1, and then we will look into the CDs once July hits to make sure we can capture as much as we can.
It's one of the tricky things, right, is because the funds go up and then they drop off over time, right? So it's not like we have this basket of money that we can just put in there indefinitely.
Right.
So that's what made it hard last year when we went about this.
Right.
We had to hit a certain point and then we did the CDs, right? So
Exactly, because
we can't lock it right now.
Right, so like right now to the end of the school year, we have huge payments going out, especially the teacher balloon payments going into the summer, and that takes millions of our cash, so. We start strong, but we don't end strong.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, if after listening to people's comments and knowing the amount of thought that's going into the budget on all of the boards, I think we're in a good place. I don't think there's optimism built into any of people's budgets and people's selections. I feel like every time we have to make a choice, we pick a conservative choice. Maybe you could always pick a more conservative choice, but you know it also has to make sense. I'm pleased and surprised that we actually hit all of our objectives that we set forth a while ago. And it would be nice to come in lower, but I think people have really done some cuts that are painful this year.
All right.
My comments are just at the macro level. I think we've scrubbed this. There's been a lot of pain. People have come down. There are unmet expectations for next year. But no, I think people have given voice to all the concerns I had already, so I'll pass.
All right.
Yeah, I probably feel more or less the same. You know, we started this process asking for hard work, and I saw it happen. You know, I went to your meetings and I saw people making cuts. At the same time, our target that kept the mill rate increase to below 2.5% was partially met because we found some money at the last minute we weren't expecting to have. And that doesn't mean that I don't think everyone made a sincere and meaningful and effective effort. But if things go south over the next year, as so many of us fear we do, then we may need some more difficult choices next year. So I guess what's happening right now is keeping us from celebrating what we really did accomplish this year.
But can I just come back to say, yeah, but to me, this is encouraging. You heard anxiety about the federal level, and we can't affect tariffs, inflation, prospect of recession, but what we can do is what we did right here and keep this budget under control. And there's a lot of serious work done. I'm really afraid of where we're headed. What can we control? We can't control those things, but we can control what we do in Simsbury. I think this is a damn good record. I mean, a really good production this year. I'm pleased that we're coming in at the mill rate we are. And I don't think we're forgetting or neglecting serious priorities. We're meeting all of them. So I share your anxiety, but I think we in Simsbury ought to be pleased with the outcome of this budget.
Well, I think Art's smarter than I am, so I'll accept what he says.
Go to your room.
Well, we've introduced creative levers that I haven't seen in previous budgets, right? And maybe we've used some of these, fund balances in previous budgets, but not in the ones that I've been involved in, right? How long are we going to be able to continue to pull budgets to take a 4.6 number and get it into the ranges that we're happy with, right? How often are we going to be able to continue to be able to pull those levers?
Well, I would say right now, I don't want to see use of general fund balance next year. I agree with that. We need to get away from that. But health reserves are naturally reducing. You can only use a third of anything over 25%, so that is a natural way to get that down.
Fair.
I haven't had, let's let Art, general comments, the other Art.
The one who's not as smart. Largely redundant with what you guys said. I mean, look, I think on a net basis, I think we're ending up in a good spot. I think the most powerful chart tonight, Lisa, was the one where we just show the last 3 years and how much smaller the increase is getting. At a municipal level, I think it's really hard. You can see what's happening at the federal level, but I think it's really hard without creating a ton of disruption to just take that someplace really drastically. So I'm proud of where we're getting it. I know there's a lot of debate about what we're doing from a special education perspective and how we're going about that. I like the creativity, if nothing else. I think it gives us a shot at, I've used this phrase, at monetizing what I think is one of our biggest assets, which is our education education system. And, you know, when we think about the number of students we have per capita, like, we have to keep addressing that and keep getting creative with that. So I like the creativity there. I like the creativity that we just talked about with the health reserve. We are gonna have to cut expenses more. Like that is, it's a little bit, I'll make it sound worse than it is, but it's a little bit hidden in here because of the creativity. And so that's not gonna go away. Like, we're gonna have to keep moving, because I like the fact that if those numbers stay, we're gonna pick up a point or two on some of our neighboring towns that we've been on the wrong side of. We're still gonna be on the wrong side though. So we've got some.
Or we're making
But
progress.
we're making progress. So that's why I'm overall very positive with it, but we've got some work to do, I think, in the next couple of years.
That makes sense. Okay, we do have a few quick items we need to go through. Amy, we have your finance director's report. Can you highlight anything we need to be worried about in the numbers? We're going to get from Amy on the 22nd actually projections, so we'll have a real idea if there's any adjustments that need to be made in April, but just on your report, if there's anything we should be made aware of or the public should be made aware of without going through everything.
Nothing of a negative nature. The majority of the items I had reported on last month for January, there were a handful of items that had additional comments, such as additional use of seasonal staffing, the increase in parks and open space because of the storm damage, things of that nature, but no, nothing of a negative nature.
Anything where we came in super great?
Building permits?
Yeah, highlight that. Are we doing better on building permits? Okay. How much better?
I think last time I checked, George had anticipated we'd be at about 1.2 million by the end of the year.
We budgeted about 6. Oh, no, we budgeted 8, right, Mark?
I think we budgeted 8.
Okay.
No, for this year.
And for last year, we did 6?
For 25?
Yeah. We did 7.
7 last year? Okay. All right, well, that's good. All right. Are there any other things you want to highlight from your finance director's report? Okay.
Nothing of substance.
And then we have, the last thing we need to do is approve the minutes of, regular minutes of March 11th, 2025.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 11th, 2025.
Okay, we'll get first, second, Art Wallace.
I'd just like to comment, I think they're very well done. These are very fulsome minutes. And this is one of the best set of minutes. I think they were accurate and very full, so kudos.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries with one abstention by Todd Burke, to be noted by the clerk.
You know what? I abstain as well.
2 abstentions, okay. Todd Burke and Bert Helfand have abstained. Is there anything else for the good of the order until April 22nd? In terms of things we need to do, we need a motion, change the health reserves, potentially change the assignment designation in consultation with Amy. I'll recommend to you what we're doing there. What other motions do we need?
The 95,000 and change that we need to account for in the Parks and Rec Special Revenue Fund as a transfer to the general fund for the memorial pool expenses.
Oh, yeah, we just didn't, that's just a corrective thing. They were going to contribute revenue, but we forgot to deduct it from their budgets.
Right, doesn't impact the general fund side.
Okay. All right, so those are the only 3, and then we've got about 60 pages of minutes of motions, like we had last year, and we'll just go through them. Request that you bring copies of the bond thing so we don't have to read them. Multiple copies. Okay. Thank you. All right, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret,
people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
Continues to educate our youth.
And keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SEM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SEM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SEM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive.
For generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools
And your government come together.